And joining me now is the former administrator for USAID, Samantha Power, who is also, of course, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. So thank you very much for being with us. The secretary has said that there was disruption, that the leadership was not cooperating, that they had to be removed. And also that, there's a litany of radical programs that many people have discounted, fact checkers. But USAID works in 120 countries. So talk to us about the real consequences to this cutoff.
Well, the human consequences really can't be overstated right now, with 1 in 4 kids under 5 in Sudan suffering from severe acute malnutrition. There is American food in warehouses that is just sitting there because of the stop work order and because of the fact that these programs have effectively been halted. There are exemptions for life-saving humanitarian aid that Secretary Rubio, I think, believes that he has issued, but in laying off the entire staff that carries out these programs, it's impossible to effectuate life-saving assistance. TB medicine, same thing. We have images that have just come in today from Kinshasa, people waiting in line for TB medication. When you don't take your medication and you're in a regimen, you build up resistance, and that medication becomes much less effective down the line. Clinical trials where we have enlisted volunteers all around the world, including in sub-Saharan Africa, to test out remedies for cholera, for TB, for HIV, for cervical cancer, remedies that could benefit the American people as well over time. And those trials just halted, people sometimes having devices in their bodies or being partially through a medical regimen. So it is just devastating for American interests. It's devastating for America's reputation as a country that keeps its word. And in terms of the USAID employees, I know because I left on January 20th, they were eager to serve. They served under the previous Trump administration. They stayed. That administration did great good in the world with broad bipartisan support. And now what is so stunning to them is that they are being attacked and disowned by their own government. These are people, Andrea, who didn't come to USAID for the money. They came because they were trying to improve the world and advance America's interests internationally. Many of the people being recalled from overseas don't have homes in the United States to come back to. They have kids who've been enrolled in school. They've put their lives on the line. About 70% of USAID missions are in conflict or crisis areas. So these are not easy places to work. But again, these public servants put their lives on the line for our country. And in the same way that we value rightly the men and women who serve the United States in uniform, we should value these civilians who have done America's bidding in so many difficult places.
Ambassador, I read in reference to the clinical trials, and you just confirmed that these trials had to halt. There was no one to conduct them, and that one woman in South Africa, according to the New York Times, had to take this device out of her, which was to protect fetuses against HIV infection. It was a trial, an experiment of a new procedure that could have been globally effective. But there's also the Helsinki Accords, which say to doctors, you cannot stop a trial once it starts if there are going to be side effects. What are these medical professionals supposed to do?
You're not asking the right person in this instance, Andrea. The dilemmas, the moral and ethical dilemmas that are being confronted, the ethical dilemmas as well being faced by our ambassadors around the world. Our ambassadors everywhere you go around the world talk about the value of USAID in building up America's political capital. When those same ambassadors go and try to get access for an American company to set up shop in a country, that political capital matters. When we seek to extradite somebody from a country, that political capital matters. Now these ambassadors are in this really horrific situation where the countries are pleading with them, please keep these programs. And the ambassadors, of course, are being instructed to repeat some of the lies that are being told about what USAID has done and how we've lost our way. And 60% of USAID's programming is life-saving humanitarian assistance or global health programming to prevent critical diseases and to help heal and treat people. 60%. And yet these, again, falsehoods about projects that are allegedly going on here or there have come in such a short time to define USAID's reputation, including with Republican supporters of USAID who have stood with the agency over decades, who have seen these programs in the field, who have offered great insight and wisdom about how we can strengthen these programs and make them more cost effective. So it's just really important that the misinformation be put to one side. I know this is easier said than done, and that people remember what USAID is offering the American people and what it has done on behalf of the American people for 6 decades.
And you warned about the impact with our adversaries, Russia and China, when we had our last interview in December. You warned about the propaganda against USAID. And you wrote in a column today in the New York Times saying that killing USAID is a win for autocrats everywhere. And, quote, we're witnessing one of the worst and most costly foreign policy blunders in U.S. history. Talk about that.
Well, it's no secret that we are in a period of intense strategic competition with the People's Republic of China. And the PRC has become more active over the last decade and a half through the Belt and Road Initiative, but also through programs that mimic some of what USAID is doing. Investments in small businesses, efforts to educate girls. They see the value of gaining this political capital and winning hearts and minds in this way. And so what we have seen is, prior to President Trump taking over, is attacks, sustained attacks by the PRC on USAID's reputation to try to denigrate the agency in the eyes of the publics in the countries in which USAID works. And since the dismantling of USAID began a couple weeks ago, we have seen the PRC relish the strategic opening that this offers them. And I just saw, in fact, as I was coming on the show today, Andrea, that in Cambodia, where demining assistance has been halted, that's not actually run by USAID, it's run by the State Department, but as part of the blanket freeze on foreign assistance, that has been halted. You can imagine the families that'll be affected if those mines are not taken out of the ground. China has come in and made a major announcement that they'll be launching a $4 million demining program. This is going to create an opening just about everywhere USAID has worked.
And of course, the PRC is the Chinese Communist Party. At the same time that this is happening to our friends and allies overseas, American farmers are complaining, including Republican elected officials in red states, because $2 billion of the USAID budget goes to buy surplus crops from U.S. farmers, which make up, among other sources, half of the World Food Program assistance. So what's happening to that food? Is it rotting overseas? It can't be distributed.
It will rot if it is not distributed. And again, in order for it to be distributed, it has to be clear that the stop work order does not apply to humanitarian assistance. It is not clear to people out in the field, but also staff are needed to oversee the distribution of assistance. Assistance doesn't move from a warehouse into the mouths of hungry people by magic. It moves because brave men and women put themselves in really difficult circumstances in order to move that food and make sure it reaches its desired destination. So again, we are experiencing in the world a profound hunger crisis. It really was exacerbated, of course, by the pandemic and then by El Nino and extreme weather events, drought, floods, and the like, where crops have been destroyed. The United States has been absolutely pivotal. American farmers have been essential to feeding the world's hungry over the course of the last couple of years. That has come to an abrupt halt. It's the farm goods that are already in the warehouses have made their way overseas, but we have farm commodities grown by American farmers that are sitting in American ports right now with flagged vessels, U.S. flagged vessels that are ready to take to the seas, and they can't take that food, and it will just sit in American ports until there is a reckoning with the grave damage that these decisions are causing.
And do you have hope that these lawsuits, the employee unions, the restraining order that they're requesting from a judge might have some impact? I mean, can you restart some of these programs if you eventually get a ruling? And the protests creating pressure.
I'd say a few things. First, the facts are on USAID's side. And unfortunately, the website was taken down so as to spread this misinformation and divert people from the facts. But as people, including the American public, but also members of Congress who may not have been engaged so much with USAID in the past, as they actually learn what USAID has been doing over these last years, including changes to work more on strategic competition and to diversify American supply chains and to help secure access to critical minerals in developing countries. I mean, really core U.S. interests. I believe that those facts are going to educate people, and the coalition of individuals who are very upset about this and want to see it reversed is going to expand. The lawsuits are extremely important. What is being done is unlawful. Congress appropriated this money to USAID to spend in the world. We're a very, USAID, I should say, very earmarked agency. And there are a lot of members of Congress that have put their stamp on how that money should be spent. And of course, the way that workers are being treated are in violation of labor laws and all of the principles that have defined employment in the U.S. government for some time. So yes, there is hope there, but the broad hope is in the goodness of the American people. And this is a passive constituency. You know, no one has had to activate on behalf of foreign assistance. I know it's not popular in some quarters, but usually it's not popular because it's not well understood how small the amount of taxpayer resources goes to this kind of work, and how essential that work is also to keep the American people safe and prosperous. So there's a lot of civic education that is needed right now, and it has to happen in a hurry. But I'm hopeful that the truth and the good that is being done for the United States as well as for the world in the end will prevail.